Hello, everybody. I am Keaton of Kinetic Catholic Ministries for Season 13, Episode 23, back with another video. I hope that you all are having an absolutely lovely Tuesday so far. Guys, Christmas just 1 week, less than 1 week away. And I know that I am very, very excited. I hope that you all are as well. It is important to remember that during kind of the hustle and bustle of the season, during shopping, right, everything that might be going on, we keep in mind one important thing, that ultimately Jesus Christ is the reason for Christmas. It is about his birth. It is an inherently Catholic holiday. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the secular spin on Christmas, but it's just important that as we engage in like Christmas movies, Christmas music, all of that, we keep in mind that ultimately Jesus Christ's birth is what we are celebrating. Now, what I want to talk about today is a little bit of an abstract concept. I guess is a word that you could use for it. But it's a concept that needs addressing nonetheless. And that's all about positives and negatives and how our outlook on life should be. Guys, there's a lot of different opinions on this, right? That we need to be overly positive, that we need to be overly negative. I'll tell you right now, I've kind of changed in recent years. I've kind of become a pretty overall like positive guy. I at least try to verbalize positivity a lot, and I think people who know me personally can attest to that, and that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing at points, right? I'm not bringing that up to say, hey, look at me, I'm perfect and positive. I'm bringing that up to talk about the dangers of that, actually, and how we need to understand the line of looking at our world, taking a step back and looking at our society from a positive standpoint and from a negative standpoint. So let's start off by talking about a couple different things. Number one, there are I feel like there's two extremes to this, right? Where you're overly positive and you ignore all the problems of our world, or where you're overly negative and you ignore all the good elements of our world. And there's a fine line and a good middle that we need to understand. The reason why being overly positive and ignoring kind of all the problems of this world can be a bad thing is because as soon as you start to ignore problems, they start to fester, they start to build up, right? It gets to a point where we have to recognize that bad things do exist, and we need to address them, right? And so there's nothing wrong with being positive, trying to have a positive outlook on things, but the second that positive outlook starts to become ignorance of issues, right? That's when it becomes a problem. And on the other side of that, if we overly look at the negative, then we miss the true beauty that humanity has. I am someone who firmly believes that humans have inherent goodness, right? That humans as a whole are kind of naturally, inherently born with a sense of what is right and what is wrong. This is a very philosophical concept, and there's a lot of like different beliefs on it. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that whatever I say goes. But what I will say is that God created each and every one of us in his image and likeness, right? God created each and every one of us with a purpose. That purpose is for us to get to the kingdom of heaven. Whether we follow that plan or not is a whole different story, but nevertheless, God has it designed for us to end up in heaven. So there at least has to be an element of goodness within each individual person. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people who are immoral. There are. There are people with a lack of a moral compass. There are people who do very, very bad things. And ultimately, there is no person who is all good, right? All of us commit sins. All of us are sinners in various different ways. But we tend to forget that humans, we kind of have a tendency to seek the good. I'm not saying this is the case for everybody. I'm speaking in a very generalized way. A good example is like Generation Z, right? Generation Z kind of gets a lot of hate in general for being one that, is immoral, lacks religion. We can talk about that all day long. Ultimately, yes, I do believe that a lot of people my age, a lot of people within Generation Z, that their beliefs are kind of skewed, that they have the wrong idea of what's morally right and morally wrong. But to give Gen Z credit, I will say this: each and every individual with Gen Z, maybe more than any other generation, wants to stand up for what's right and what's wrong. Not stand up for what's wrong. You know what I mean? Wants to stand up for what's right. Wants to seek the goodness of others. They just sometimes have a skewed view of what is right. But ultimately, there is a sense of compassion among Generation Z that is unlike any other. And I use Generation Z as an example, as a sample size of our society and our humanity as a whole, partly because it's what I know best, right? I'm in Generation Z. I know my peers best more than I know another generation. But we have a tendency to seek the good, even if we are unsure what that good is. Now, there's another philosophical belief that essentially states that, everybody commits every action thinking that their action is good. I'm not going to get into that or not really, because ultimately I don't know enough to be able to have an opinion on that. I could kind of see that, but I also don't fully get it. I'm going to be honest, I don't have the education necessary to fully be aware of if that's a philosophical truth or not, and therefore that's not what I'm trying to say. I am not trying to say that each individual chooses something, even if it's wrong, thinking that it's good. That's not what I'm saying, and I'm sure that there are people who choose what is bad to choose what is bad. However, there is an inherent goodness of humans. And that's a positive outlook on the world that we need to remember. We are surrounded on a day-to-day basis with hearing the negative, hearing what is wrong, right? We turn on the news and it's a million bad things. We check social media and it's a million bad things of things that are happening. I'm not going to say that that's inherently bad, because again, it's important that we know the problems of our world so that we are able to address them. If we were to ignore those problems, if we weren't to know anything bad that's going on, that would be a really big issue, right? Because we need to know the problems of the world. However, sometimes if we completely encompass our life in complete negativity, then we lose the true meaning of life. We lose the true point as to why we are here. And I do believe that the question of why we are here, the meaning of life, that question cannot be answered without religion. That question cannot be answered without God. God is why we are here. God created us in his image and likeness. And I know I've mentioned this, to get to the kingdom of heaven. That is a good thing. And if we're just constantly seeing all the bad things around us, then we begin to lose that. We begin to lose that ultimately God is right here with us on this earth. He allows evil to happen for a reason, right? But God is not evil. And if I were to fully get into why God allows bad things to happen, that would be a whole separate video. And I've actually made a video on that before if you want to go check that out. Because there is a reason, right? There is a genuine reason. But it's just important to understand that there is a fine line, right? Between being overly positive and being overly negative. Because when we're surrounded by negativity, I think that it's kind of understandable how we could get into this habit of just wanting to see the downside of things. And this could even be on a smaller scale, right? Other than just a wide societal view of our world and the problems within our world on a day-to-day basis, right? So just seeing, the negatives in our everyday life. I think that it's a good mentality to have, to try to see things from a positive light. I do. I think that's a good mentality, and I'll stand by that. However, there's also an understanding that let's acknowledge that there are problems in the world. Let's be willing to address them, because the church right now, guys, it needs good leaders. Let's be willing to stand up to defend our faith and address the problems of our world, the immorality that goes on in our world, right? Like many laws that we have here in America that I've made videos on many a times. I'm not specifically going to mention it here, that are very immoral. Let's address those. Let's stand up for what's right. And in doing so, let's not lose the understanding that ultimately, as Christians, it is our calling to love everybody else, regardless of their moral compass or not. We are not to judge another individual. We can only judge his or her actions, and there's a difference. I can't look at that person and say, that's a bad person for believing that. I can say that belief is bad. I can say that belief is immoral. But I cannot sit here and condemn that human being, and there's a difference. And this goes right in with the positive and negative kind of aspect of life. There is a middle area. And the middle area is having a positive mindset, trying to improve on a consistent basis, and acknowledging the negatives of our world, trying to address them and trying to improve upon them. Guys, suddenly fixing all of the issues that go on in our day-to-day life like that isn't possible. And sometimes God sends us battles for a reason. But ultimately, if we think that we can solve things, if we think that we can make things better without his help, then we're out of our mind. We need God's help in order to improve our world and also our personal life. And God is right there willing to help us to address the negatives, and also there to help us, to give us a mindset of positivity. So now that the topic is done, do y'all know what it is time for now? It's time for
the Saint of the Week.
And today's Saint of the Week is more like a group of saints, and it can kind of be a dark story, but I think that it is a story that is worth telling. Their feast day is over a week from now. It's just a couple days past Christmas, and that is the Holy Innocents. I'm sure many have heard the story of the Holy Innocents, but essentially King Herod was someone who was pretty insecure about his kingliness. I don't know if that's a word, but now it is. He was pretty insecure about it, and so when the wise men approached him, and he heard about the newborn king of the Jews, this scared Herod. It did. He didn't want anybody to take over his role as king, and again, that king of the Jews being Jesus Christ. And so Herod decided that all those children in Bethlehem under the age of 2 were to be killed. And so there was a massacre of all babies 2 years and under being killed in Bethlehem. Luckily, the wise men had warned Mary and Joseph, and also Joseph was warned in a dream. And so the Holy Family of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus Christ were able to flee to Egypt. And so Jesus Christ survived. But the Holy Innocents, and it's often pictured to be like hundreds of babies because of the size of Bethlehem at the time. It is an estimated like 20 to 26 babies that were killed, and we still don't know how many. But what we do know is that the church recognizes them as martyrs for Jesus Christ, right? Martyrs for their faith, because in a way they were, right? It wasn't their fault of what happened, yet they died, and it was so that our Lord Jesus Christ could live, and that it truly is a beautiful thing. And so while, yes, it's a dark story, when we're talking about negatives and positives, right? It's a dark story, and we could kind of focus on that negative aspect of it, or we could look at the light, which is, it's dark, but it's also kind of a beautiful story. You know what I mean? And so it is important to remember the Holy Innocents. And as we go through our life, if we feel like we're maybe struggling to find the positive outlook on things, or we're struggling to be willing to address the problems of our world, we can always pray through the Holy Innocents for help. Holy Innocents, pray for us. So before you guys click off this video, I hope that you guys are having an absolutely Merry Christmas. Please check out the Kinetic Catholic Ministries website at kineticcatholicministries.com. There's so many awesome things you can do on there. You can read about me. You can contact us. All of our videos are up there. There's a very own Kinetic Catholic shop up there, so please do go check that out. I'm not just a YouTuber, I'm also a Catholic speaker, so if you want to book me to come and speak at your church, school, men's group, women's group, youth group, parish, you name it, please reach out to us directly at kineticcatholicministries@gmail.com, or go to the website kineticcattholic.com and contact us from there. The link to all 3 of our social medias will be in the description down below. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so please do go check it out. Please comment and send your topic suggestions that you might have for future videos, and I will be happy to check them out. Please like the video as well. Please click the red subscribe button down below and the bell next to it. That way you get notified when I come out with a new video. If you are already subscribed, then please share this channel and video with your friends and family. Make sure that they know about Kinetic Catholic. Once again, guys, I hope that you guys are having an absolutely great Advent right now. I know some of us, it's finals, in the midst of finals, so praying for you all for that. And then others, we got off last week, like myself, which is pretty exciting. Once again, guys, have an absolutely lovely day. This was Keaton of Kinetic Catholic Ministries. I will see you all next week, and hi, Brielle.